some people use writing exercises and free writing as a means of practicing the craft of writing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people use them as a tool for getting the story they're working on to the next place. Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 183 of the podcast. And we are on April 16th, 2025, as we record this. Today, we're going to be talking about writing exercises and our thoughts, pros and cons on them. We want to thank our existing patrons first for believing in our work offline. And here on the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/strangeairstories for short stories in the paranormal mystery genre, and patreon.com/Valerie Isan for writing instruction, books, coaching, planning, all those other goodies behind the scenes. So, what is your author update, Erick? What's going on in your world?
Taxes are done.
Oh, God, yes. Yay!
Taxes are done. You feel like that character in like a Looney Tunes. It's like, the bullets are flying and then they just like kind of go the knives. Remember the knives when the people throw the knives and the knives go do, 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 do,
Right.
do, and they make an
Uh-huh.
out, That's what taxes feel like. It's like, okay, I ducked that bullet again. If anyone from the IRS is listening, my taxes were all real.
They were
Um,
all real. Yes.
they were all real. But it always just doesn't it always make you feel like it always feels like you're making it up as you go along. You're kind of like, there's all this stuff like, oh, wait, there's this. Like, I haven't thought about this since last year. Okay, I guess I have to think about, am I controlling a foreign asset that's, cryptocurrency or was affected by a disaster? It just creates questions all the time. It creates questions.
I don't know about cryptocurrency or anything like that, but sometimes the part that gets me is we use TurboTax.
Yep.
And so the categories for business in
Right.
TurboTax don't match up with the categories on my spreadsheet. And every year I'm
Right.
like, I got to write these down because
Right.
so it becomes this whole thing of, you know, we need to write down the office supplies expenses. And then I realize, oh, that actually, or no, it was
Because you
I
counted
have two
postage in
things.
office supplies.
And it
And then
should
you're
have
like,
been like advertising or something like
right.
that.
Yeah.
So then I have to recalculate on the fly, like, or maybe this year I'll just put it in that one. And then
But here's the
next year
thing,
I'll know what I'm doing. Huh?
it all deducts the same. That's the
It
thing. Like,
does, right?
so
And
it
I
doesn't,
just,
if you're audited, nobody's going to say
this
that,
should have been in
well,
this category.
well, I guess what I'm always wondering about is when, because TurboTax is updated every year we're not going to talk about taxes all day, but like TurboTax is updated all the time. They ask you questions that are just relevant to the bigger economy, right? And
Right.
so, we have 401ks and these things that we're like investing in, but then there's new questions around something that is familiar. And then I don't get flummoxed. Like I can figure it out, but it always throws me for a loop. Like, oh gosh, am I subject to a mandatory disbursement from an RMD? I don't like
I don't even know what that
Goo-
means.
I'm Googling like, am I subject to this thing? So it it creates uncertainty, but as we know, if you've ever listened to NPR around this time, this is a by design. Your taxes are complicated because the lobby of accountants and tax preparation services is massive and they want to keep taxes complicated, so we keep paying them to do it. Taxes could be a lot simpler, but it's politically not okay because anyway, I'm writing. That's my writer update.
Also, I got an email from you saying that like your pre-order is up. Or was that from you or was that from Amazon? I got a pre-order like announcement or something. Was that you?
It's probably from Amazon.
Oh. So
Amazon doing its thing.
so let's put that in your author update. If you want to buy the or pre-order the next installment in the Strange Air story world. What's the name of the book?
Shadow signals.
Shadow Signals is up for pre-order. It was a great cover. The cover's rad. I liked
Thanks.
it.
Hat tip to Miblart. That was like I gave them probably 3 sentences of what I wanted, and that's what they came up with. It's
How do
pretty
you
much
spell
what
them again?
it's
Mible?
Miblart.
Miblart.
Lart. That
Art.
was that was like their first concept. There was very little in the way of like wriggling around with them with that. They were like, I was like, that's great. I really like that. Um,
Yeah, I really love the shadow on the other side of the bonfire. Like that was woo, cool. Very cool.
we're we're doing it. Yeah, that's going to be out soon. Um, what about you? What's going on in your world? You dodged the tax bullet too.
Yeah, well, I finished it. Yeah, like I did the taxes and I finished a client project.
Nice.
And that was good. And yeah, so I'm getting my time is coming back to me. I've been working some nights and weekends to finish up on that client deadline that I had, and my work shifts at Tsunami are going down in a couple weeks. I'm down to 4 days a week now, and next month I'll be down to 3 days a week. So that is back to my preferred schedule. So 3 days at the bookstore, 2 days a week to work on client work, and then I have 2 days for like the weekend, whatever that is. I usually don't have 2 days together off, but I can still dedicate one of those days off to like house projects and stuff that never gets done, you know?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
one day to like be off and just not do anything and or go see my dad in Albany or, something like that. So I'm going to get my time back, my equilibrium back, my balance, and that feels really
Yeah.
good too.
Cool.
So that's kind of my world right now. And I think my next like book project, I told you last week I got the cover back for the first memoir that I had published, the new with the updated spine size, whatever. So I'll just upload that cover. And so then that will be available for purchase, in paperback once again. And then I can order some copies and put them in the bookstore. Like I
Yay.
haven't been able to like sell that other than as an ebook for so long because of spine size. It's a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. 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 And it's like all of your publishers are very specific about how many pages and what type of paper, and if they don't get it right.
Well, it
So,
looks stupid if it doesn't get right. Like sometimes we get books into
oh
the
gosh.
bookstore and I'm
Yeah.
like, just so y'all know, book clerks, this is what it looks like when they don't have the spine size right. It's
Right.
totally
Right.
obvious. Like there's a
Yep.
little hump, and
Yep. Yep. The word is like slightly over onto that front. It's on that little no man's land right there.
yeah,
Yep.
just yucky. All right. What are you reading?
I am reading. So I'll give some context to it. I listen to a podcast, Claytemple Media. I listen to it. It's a strange stories, weird stories podcast. They talk about new and classic stories in the like horror and weird science fiction world. And they are doing a book called the Imago sequence, Imago sequence by Laird Barron. And Laird Barron is a new author in that world. I've never read him before, but he's this like wild, like Alaska sled dog noir horror author with he's got an eye patch. Um, that's rad. Um, all of his author pictures are him like, standing on an Alaskan coastline, windswept with an eye patch. That's awesome.
Sounds very
I want,
gothic.
yeah, it's just rad. I've always wanted to read. I don't do the thing with my like author with my writing podcast where I'm like I'm reading the book with or um I don't read the book in relation to the podcast. I just listen to the analysis, and if I've read it, I reflect on it. If I haven't, I create some anticipation. So this one, I'm like reading the book, and then I'm going to quickly listen to the podcast after that, so I have a more immediate response. I'm kind of ready to geek out. Um,
So they do like case studies or like of
no, they take a story. So that particular podcast, um, they do a book every week, every 2 weeks. They have multiple sort of themes. They're always doing weird fiction. They're always doing
what's the name of
science
the
fiction.
podcast? Clay what?
Claytemple Media.
Claytemple Media.
Uh,
Okay.
Yeah. And it's, so they'll talk about the story, they'll talk about the themes, they talk about the author. Um, and if it's a longer story, they'll do like a recap episode, then an analysis episode. And they're very scholarly. Like one of the guys is a medieval history professor. The other guy, I think, is an American history professor. It comes off very, um, it's very academic feeling, which makes me like kind of slightly revert back to that, college sophomore that was like ready to read the book before the lecture because I wanted to know what the professor was talking about. Um, so I'm in that mode. So I'm reading that. It's pretty great.
Cool.
Pretty great. Pretty great. What
I'm
about you?
still reading Broken Open by Martha Gies, and I just finished reading Shadow Signals. Very
Oh, I
cool
love that
book.
book. I love that book. I heard that the author, the one that you read, had like the multiple chapters in it, like
Well,
repeated chapters. That's.
did
I
you
hope he
read my
doesn't publish.
email?
Yeah, I did.
That's never happened before. So this is
That's
all
never happened.
code, everyone. Should we edit
Yeah,
this
yeah.
out?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Well, then
Um,
you should give more context because no one's going to know what that meant.
well, I had there's the version that you did the line edit for had multiple, like there was two versions of a couple of chapters in there, um,
So just some
and
scene
just re
repeats.
just some scene repeats and like I don't know, I just forgot to pull them out because that's what I'll do sometimes. I'll like if I rewrite a scene, but there's like I want to keep them together just for long enough to
To
compare them
see,
because
yeah, to compare them or to like pull, oh, I really
yeah,
like this line. Let me move that line over to this side. And yeah, I do
yeah,
that too. But then I
yeah.
delete the
I delete I 99.9% of the time delete them before I turn them into people. This was the 0.01% of the time. I apologize. So I
That's
am
funny.
adequately shamed for my oversight. I am adequately shamed.
No
Am I
shame.
not? Am I
That's
not
why you
adequately
have a line
shamed right
editor,
now?
right? Just to catch the little oops. All right. We should get into our
Well, let's do a
main
tip. Like
a tip. Oh, do you have a tip? Okay.
I'm gonna keep jumping on. So I've been really into using ChatGPT in creative, interesting ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would like I'm not going to use it to write any
Mm-hmm.
original material, but there are a lot of really creative things you can do with it. And I just want to give an example as a tip to maybe help people like branch out in their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on a story right now where the main character has been holding on to a cassette tape that holds a voice that she wants to hear, but she hasn't listened to the tape because she's afraid of what it sounds like. She hasn't heard her mother's voice in like 35 years, and that has her mother's voice, and she's scared.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted was one of the like I'm giving away a beat in a story that's critical, but like when she plays the tape for the first time, the tape is damaged and it doesn't play properly.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought to myself, how am I going to create, because when a tape doesn't work, it doesn't, it's like every 8 seconds is warbled or every 3 seconds there's a hiss. So I wrote that what the mother says on the tape out and I put it into ChatGPT and I said, ChatGPT, pretend that this is a transcript from a recording on a damaged cassette tape. Can you create a warble, a 2 second warble that would it makes the words indecipherable throughout the tape. So it took my transcript and it made it imperfect. It went through and it
Mm-hmm.
created this like predictable like tape defect that I could then but then I said, "Well, I want it to warble on these important emotional words. So can we create the first warble here where
Mm-hmm.
she says I love you or here like and it went through and it repositioned all of the tape defects on the recording. So now I have this like 25-minute mother to daughter conversation that creates that is imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting how it took and I said I wanted a tape hiss every so often, and I want the sort of like scruffy warble that a tape will have every so many seconds. And it did it in this amazing way of
That's
like,
awesome.
yeah, I was so impressed by it, and I was talking to somebody about it yesterday, and they said, "I bet you most people don't even think to use ChatGPT in something like that in that way, because we think of it as creating new content, um, as opposed to like how can I, because that would take me forever to do that. I would have like
Right. Yeah.
it wouldn't have, but when I read it from the character's point of view, because she's listening for certain things from her mother, she's listening for assurances, she's like, when I got it right, it was like, oh, this is like, oh my gosh, all it is the connective words. It's not the big stuff, and it did the perfect like obscuring of important stuff.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah. I use
I,
ChatGPT as like a virtual assistant.
oh yeah,
Or and for and for like copy. I suppose that's pretty standard though.
yeah, I think, yeah,
Or come up with a outline for the next workshop that I'm teaching on this and this and this, or what's the summary for this workshop that I want to pitch for this conference, or
right.
that's kind of what I use it for there. But I try, I don't know if this is a tip or because I don't know how else to use it, but I always am super nice to my chat GPT.
I always
And
say thank you.
yeah, one time I asked like what I should call them. Like, do you have a name? And they had a name. My chat, excuse me, my chat GPT, um, their name is Echo. And I can't remember now why, but they had this really cool reason why their name was Echo.
Uh,
Like, oh, I'd like to be called Echo because blah, 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 blah. It was super interesting. And I was like, right on. Okay. Echo it is, and they always, so that's how I address them. Hey, Echo, can you help me with blah, blah, blah? Sure, I'd love to.
my ChatGPT was calling me by the wrong name for a while.
What?
Yeah, it was like it was calling
He's
me
got so many clients, he just doesn't know.
it was calling me a different name, and so I actually said, I it felt weird. I said, "Look, my name is Eric. Can you please refer to me as Eric from here on out?" It got really weirdly apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry. This happens. I'm not perfect.
That's
Like,
awesome.
oh,
I
this is
love
so
it.
weird.
I have goosebumps. Like, this is kind of cool. And
It's also scary. It's too weird.
I don't know. I'm embracing it. I really like it. In fact, I think I should come up with more ways to use it. I think your idea about the tape thing, that was awesome. What made you
Yeah,
think of that?
because I was looking at
Just like
I
I wonder what, and that's what triggers you mind to go to ChatGPT.
well, I actually started somewhere else. I was working on a story, one you will read soon. Um, and it took place on a derelict farm from like the 30s, like the scene. And I said like I drive by at old farms. I think I know what they look like, but I don't really know. So I told ChatGPT give me 15 buildings that would be on this farm from this era and 10 things that could go wrong with every one of those um things. So it was like, here's a windmill. Here's the 10 things that can go wrong with a windmill. Here's 10 things that can go wrong with a cattle grate. It did all this crazy stuff. And then it asked me, um, if you're writing a story in a genre, um, I can help you focus on things that could go wrong with it, suggestive of a genre. So that made me
Mm.
think like, oh, so then I asked it, with a windmill, what could go wrong in a like a romance story or something, and it kind
Hmm.
of like and it just started to like think out loud for me, and
Hmm.
so that's what cued me to like, okay, the next time I want to, again, it's an evolved search engine, and that's what it like, or it's an evolved tool, because
Hmm.
I then got really granular in those very specific recommendations it gave me and said, oh, so if the windmill collapses, what would it look like on the inside? Oh, well, there would be, there would probably be birds' nests and rodents, and there would be, the structures, and the metal would shear, and that would create. So it did all this really creative thinking for me. Not creative thinking, but like it did
It's
the
just
heavy
research.
lifting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Instead of you going to Google and saying, what would it look like on the inside of a windmill if it collapsed? and having to go through forums and like, historical documents and like, so
Yeah.
yeah, Echo can
Yeah, so it
research.
added to the like what if prospect that
Yeah.
ChatGPT offers. It was like, oh, so what if I asked it to do I don't know, what if it did this? Like what if this transcript was on a tape and it was defective and here's how it was defective? Then it yeah.
So I would love to just transition right here and to writing exercises because I think that ChatGPT could also be great at providing writing exercises, writing prompts, and I guess I just want to segue and right here and say like I think using writing exercises is a great thing to do if you find yourself um, blocked or stuck or for instance, I mean, I've probably used this example on the podcast many times before, but years and years ago, I wrote a romance, first one. Like, I was like, oh, I want to try writing a romance. So I wrote this whole thing. I sent it to my alpha readers, and they were like, but the reason why was because they didn't like the character was too wishy-washy. So I rewrote the outline and the backstory to create, more chutzpah for this character. And then I started rewriting the story. And when I got to the place where I needed her to like plot point do this thing so that the rest of the story outline would work, she wouldn't do it because now she was a stronger person. So that stalled me out for like 2 years before I could get back to that book. I ended up writing another book in the meantime, but I was like talking to other writers and, like trying to I could have just gone to Echo and said, "Hey, what could make this strong, independent woman do this thing?" And I bet, like as a writing exercise or, like yeah, I think that that would have sped up my process a lot and my stuck spot would have been, you know, gone down to a sliver of time.
I mean, I think that the thing when you hear writing exercise and when you pitch the idea, I read it last
Mhm.
night, like my immediate assumption was like we're talking about pen in hand writing exercises, and that's not always what a writing exercise is. Like writing exercise can be, I'm if I'm ever stuck, I just go I find somewhere to go listen to people talking. I go to a cafe, I go to a bar, I go to a, just sometimes I'll sit in the loft above the checkouts at the library and I'll just listen to people interacting with the librarians and it's a series of random encounters. Some people are asking for the bathroom, some people are asking for where to find a book, but like that is like an exercise for me. It gets my like out of my it makes the next thing easier. So I think we often like it's writing exercise is not like a middle school like write a 500-word story about that's not an exercise, that's
No.
an assignment, and I think you can do those little weird things that jog your mind. um,
So I just taught this workshop for word crafters on finding like unlocking the heart of your memoir. So the very first thing we did was a writing exercise, which came from this book, Poem Crazy, and it was about your name, what your name meant to you, or like changing your name, or my name is, but it used to be. Some people call me like there was a series of like sentence starters and there was
mhm.
like seven of them or whatever. And so then we just started writing that. And some people came up with this real, I thought it was important when you're writing memoir to like really go down granular and be like, all right, what does my name mean? Who am I to myself? And as a great way to start writing a memoir, or at least start thinking about what you want to put in your memoir, I thought that was a great writing exercise.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It gets you to a story.
What's that?
it, get, it gets you to a story, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's a
I
very
mean, that's the whole
simple.
purpose of writing exercises, I think, is to get words on the page. So
Right.
whether you are using them for idea generation or if you are using them to break out of a stuck spot, or if you are, yeah, I mean, I love writing exercises sometimes, and free writing. I kind of see that as a writing exercise as well. Like if I'm just stuck, when I am stuck, usually it is because I am feeling like I don't know how to say what I want to say and have it be good. Like, so there's a lot of like ego and editor brain that's mixed in, and perfectionism, and if my end goal is to like move someone and to have like an emotional response, whether it's for nonfiction or fiction or memoir or whatever, I want them to feel something. And so that kind of gets in the way before I even start. I'm like, oh my God, that's so much pressure. Like, how can I say this thing? So when I am stuck on how do I say the thing, then the writing exercise I do is just to write that. Like, okay, what I want to say is blah, 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 blah. And then I just start writing. Or I really want my reader to feel that I'm writing this out. I really want my reader to feel this thing. So I think that maybe if I say it this way, and then it just starts, it's the inertia, that stymies me sometimes. So getting words on the page in whatever format, even if it's like, I know I'm going to delete this, and maybe sometimes that's what gets you to write, because like, oh, this is just practice. I'm going to delete this. This isn't, for the book. This isn't for the whatever. And that's what gets me going again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that like separating it from outcome is important. Like, it's what I'm hearing is like it I used to write down like great first lines. Like
Mm-hmm.
here's a bunch of great first lines. It doesn't have to be in a story. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I actually pulled the notebook out that where I used to write those things, and like, yeah, there's probably like 500 just what could be the first line to a story, and it doesn't actually have to be anything. But it's nice to write them down because you feel like you've captured something, and it's just for you. That's I don't know. That to me is meaningful. Like it's kind of
Before
just
we
for
hit
you.
record, you were saying, I don't do writing exercises. Everything I write down just becomes my story. So say more about that.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like a flex of some kind, but I don't really mean it that way. But I think that, when do something, when I do something that feels like, well, I'll just riff on what I just said. Like when I do something that feels like it's just for me, I find that it's often puts me in the place of the story that I've been working on anyway. And that tells me that the
Mm,
story I'm writing is for me.
mm,
Um, in general. And so yeah, like I don't write down those first lines anymore because oftentimes when I'm like, wandering lonely as a cloud, as the romantic poet might say, I and I get like an idea, like I get that idea, I get that first line. Um, I'm like, oh, that's where this fits in the thing that I'm writing. That's where this
mm.
fits in the thing that I'm doing. Um, so the exercise is more I mean, I guess I just feel like I guess I sometimes feel like I'm honed in on, what I'm writing is so, kind of firmly placed that the exercises are, it's like I'm a basketball player, right? There's a difference between going to the gym and getting in shape and doing, you know, shooting free throws or taking practice layups or something. It's like, I feel like the exercises I do are in the mechanic of writing the story that I'm writing instead of just like in general getting better at language, or getting
Oh,
better at
yeah. Like,
storycraft.
yes. I guess maybe we should talk about that. Like, some people use writing exercises and free writing as a means of practicing the craft of writing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people use them as a tool for getting the story they're working on to the next place.
Right.
Or, you know, like we talked about it being generative. And I think that I probably use that more often. When I first started writing, I think I used the writing exercises as practice. But once I, you know, had more skill and more confidence, I stopped using them for that purpose. But I do go back to using writing exercises for practice if I am doing something that I'm not as confident about, or I'm working in a genre that I don't normally work in, or I want to learn more about XYZ, or yeah. So
Yeah.
I've used them for both purposes, and I think that
Yeah.
they are important for both purposes.
Yeah. When I
Mostly,
was
I don't use them for the practice anymore.
Yeah, when I was writing screenplays, like the exercise, I did all the exercises that I remember my professor used to say, like, write a scene where one person has something the other person wants it, but they can't name it. Like that was always his
Hmm.
exercise. Um, and or, like a character starts out firmly, one thing in the conversation in a conversation, and they completely change their mind. Rewrite that scene so they're talking themselves into it. Rewrite that scene so that someone is talking them into it. So those kind of exercises were, yeah, like extremely valuable. And yeah, there's
Hmm.
probably volumes of material sitting somewhere that of mine that was like those conversations. Somebody talking themselves into jumping out of an airplane is what I remember. Two people sitting at the brink of the open door and with the
Right.
parachute in hand having that conversation. Um,
Or practice writing subtext. I think that would be something that would be useful for me as a writer because I don't feel
yeah,
like I'm strong in that skill. So
yep,
practicing things, just because. But yeah, if you're a career author and you like want all the words that you write to be something that you can sell, then
right.
maybe you don't think that writing exercises are something that you should, want to have part of your, weekly writing time. But yet, there are some ways you can still use writing exercises that would be beneficial. Like you said, like if you get stuck, you just go and listen to people talk. So like if you need more dialogue in your manuscript and
Yeah,
you're at a
that
loss.
tends that tends to be where like I'm, often accused by you for being prolific, but I think that's where being prolific reaches its becomes difficult is like you sit down and realize like how much you're writing, and the question becomes, am I writing or am I writing stories? Am I just and that going out and listening to people talk and being able to slip into that dialogue is often like that's the exercises comes from the assurance that I get from that. Like, oh, I think my dialogue sounds a little more like this than, we've all written very stilted dialogue before, like, thank you, Valerie, for doing the thing I asked you to do on time. You're welcome, Eric, for the opportunity to, like we've all written that dialogue. So I think,
Right.
for me, like I go out and I listen to people argue at a bar and I'm like, oh, that, I think I'm closer to that than
Yeah,
the
yeah.
other thing. When our anxiety often puts us in like, is this any good? Is this worth a darn? Um, but I think the exercise is again like it's what works for you. I mean, some people might love the 30 the 30-minute writer sprint that doesn't consequence free. That just might be what they love to do. Those scenes.
Well, and I think that there is strong value in free writing. I mean, that's kind of what journaling is for me in the morning, too. It's just morning pages, it's just longhand, blah on the
There's the name of
page.
a memoir, Morning Pages. There you go.
I think that might be trademarked. I don't know. That's a Julia Cameron thing from The Artist's Way. That's one of her.
Oh my gosh. As I was Googling it, you said it, the name Julia. Yeah. Wow, you know your stuff. Julia Cameron.
I reread that book all the time. The Artist's Way.
Oh, okay. Well, don't use it. Anybody out there who likes that title, don't use it because it's written by somebody else.
Although titles are not copyrighted, so
Well,
you can
I bet
you
you.
can you can write a book called Carrie if you want to, but I wouldn't.
I just watched the movie Enemy Mine, and I went to go look for the book on Kindle for Enemy Mine because it's based on a Hugo winning novella. There are about 35 to 40 books just on Kindle
Yeah.
that are Enemy Mine, and they're romance, they are,
Yeah.
Western thrillers. It's like it's every possible genre, everyone.
Hmm.
Every play on what Enemy Mine could possibly mean. So anyway, yeah. But I think it just goes to the point. Yeah, that is your writing exercise.
Hmm.
You are the morning pages, um, trademarked, is the way to get out of, to get into the pattern of writing, whatever that is.
Yeah. And this is not a writing exercise, but also a really great tip for like getting into writing. And I'll close with this.
Hmm.
It was a tip from Rachel Herron. What she did in the morning to get writing, she would wake up in the morning and go to her computer before she had her coffee or did her yoga or anything like that. She
Weird.
would
Before coffee.
she would go to her computer, pull up her document, and like look at the thing that she was going to write today. And then she'd walk away. And then she would go do her morning routine and have her coffee and do her yoga and like her morning pages, whatever, And then when she came back, so all that would
Trademarked.
just be sort of like ruminating, in the back of her
Yep.
head. And then she'd
Yep.
sit down and she'd be like, all right.
That's funny you say that. They're not in these bookshelves. I think they're in my downstairs bookshelves. There was this really great, for anybody that likes to read interviews, the Paris Review, which did interviews with, classic authors like Alice Walker and Ernest Hemingway. They did a collection of I think I don't know, it's downstairs. I think it's 5 or 6 volumes of their interviews. And I read all of those. I read all of those the summer that I got married. And I remember one of the questions that every interviewer asked the author was like, take me through your writing practice. And I would say 9 out of 10 of them said the first thing they did in the morning was they went and got either familiar with their space. They would come in and just like be in the office for 5 minutes before going about their routine, or they'd look at what they wrote the day before and then go into their routine.
Hmm.
And I think that there must be something to that. Just like I remember what I wrote yesterday. I'm going to ruminate on it. I'm going to, incorporate. The writer's work isn't always with a pen or keyboard. It's a lot of
Right.
internal.
Yeah. We get ideas going through our like ideas come when you're not thinking about stuff, when you're in the shower, when you're on your walk, when you're, washing dishes, like stuff comes to you. So I think that's part of it, remind yourself what it is that you want to be thinking about subconsciously and then go about some mindless activity like getting ready for work in the morning or something like that. And then when you sit down to work, it's
There it
there.
is.
There it
There it
is.
is.
All right. Well, we are out of time. So I hope that gave y'all some ideas about writing exercises that you could use to generate new material or to get unstuck or to consider doing them if you think that they are, a waste of time. Maybe they aren't.
Maybe that waste of time thinking is limiting beliefs that you need to get past. Very,
Yeah.
very well could
Ooh,
be.
I like the lingo. All
I know.
right.
I knew. That was for you. That was my little like. I know you.
Nod to the life coaching. All right. Well, next week we're going to be here with a guest, um, Angus Nelson. He is going to be talking to
Yeah.
us about
Woo!
having confidence and also avoiding burnout. So I think
I've
that's a
loved every guest
timely.
that we've had, but Angus
Mhm.
Nelson wins for the best name, as I said before we press record.
That's awesome.
I love
All right.
Angus Nelson.
See you next time.
See ya.
Bye for now.
Bye bye.